Thank you very much, and I'm hoping everybody is having a good show. The reason I started off being anonymous was is nothing spectacular. It's just that I work in a high tech field, and I didn't want the first thing people do when you look for a new job is they Google you, and I don't want them to see tens of thousands of articles that have timestamps during the workday. So that's really the main reason. Since then things have gotten actually worse, and I have seen, people being attacked and, online and canceled and all that sort of stuff. And, for myself, I probably wouldn't mind, but, I'd have to worry about my family and stuff. At this point, it's like not so, I'm not so combative in my blog, but you never know. So I'd rather, at this point, it's safer, at least until I retire from my day job. But again, thank you very much. And as you see, the title of the talk is "A Modest Proposal for a New Definition of Anti-Semitism." The and I've given a little bit of thought of this. First of all, like, what makes a good definition? What's the definition of a good definition, so to speak? So I would say that it should be precise, it should be complete, it should be concise, and it should be useful. But the way I like to look at it is, I think ideally it should be an algorithm that you take a situation, an object, something, and you run it through this definition as you would with a computer program, and the answer is either yes or no. It's, does it fit the definition? And the answer should be fairly clear from doing that. So, for example, if we have all of these animals that are sitting on the left-hand side, and you want to know whether they're dogs or not, we have a definition, a fairly good definition: a domesticated carnivorous mammal that typically has a long snout, an acute sense of smell, non-retractable claws, and a barking, howling, or whining voice. And from that, you could pretty much figure out which of these animals are dogs, even though dogs look way different from each other, and which of them are not dogs. Is it a perfect definition? It's not perfect. There is such a thing as a wild dog, which would not be a domesticated animal. So it's not perfect, but it's a pretty good definition, and it's a pretty good algorithm. It works nearly all of the time, and that to me is like the way a good definition should be. So, and I think that's what a definition of anti-Semitism should be as well. Okay, let's look at the IRA working definition. And again, I don't want to slam on IRA. IRA's done. I mean, I'm very happy every time I see that IRA gets adopted by another country or another organization. But by the nature of this lecture, I am going to be very critical of IRA. But politically, it's been wonderful, and I'm all for it. But as a definition, it is not a good definition. Here it is. It's quite long, as I'm sure all of you know, and I put in yellow the parts of it that are not precise. It's a certain perception of Jews. What exactly does that mean? It may be expressed as hate towards Jews, which means sometimes it may not be. It could be against Jewish or non-Jewish individuals. Here it's things that may serve as illustrations. They're not. They could be. You have to take into account the context. All of these different caveats are in this definition, and all of those weaken in my mind, the effectiveness of the definition, because in the end, you look at this and you're like, okay, now let's try something new that happened. Is it anti-Semitic or is it not? You don't get as much guidance as you would like for something like this. Now, it is true that there are some definitions, a reasonable definition of a definition is something that lists examples, but even in this case, even the 11 examples that are listed here, it says, must be taking into account the context. So even these 11 examples are not always going to be anti-Semitic, but it doesn't describe what the context is, So in the end, it's really, really very vague and imprecise. And so let's look at it as an algorithm. Let's just pretend that you have the whole thing in your mind, and now you're saying, okay, let's take examples of anti-Semitism that are not in its definition. The Khazar theory, saying that all Ashkenazic Jews are really descended from the Khazar Empire. The Boston Mapping Project that's been in the news, in which the BDSers in Boston were coming up with their own list of Jewish organizations that are connected to police and all these other things, but a lot of them were clearly Jewish organizations. Ilhan Omar saying all about the Benjamins. More recently, all of these people, including politicians saying that Israel purposefully murdered Shireen Abu Akleh, people claiming that George Soros is the Antichrist, or people saying that there were, mostly Palestinians saying there's no history of temples in Jerusalem. Are those anti-Semitic? I think most of us would agree that all of them are. But if you try to run it through the IRA working definition, we don't know. It really doesn't give us much guidance on that. And in that sense, I don't think it does a very good job. So, and I'm not the only person to have noticed this. There are some serious papers, and I'm not talking from the anti-Zionists that go crazy over it. I'm not talking about the Jerusalem Declaration guys or the BDSers or the J Streeters or whatever. I'm saying, serious people have written papers about it. In fact, this top paper that I quote from is on the IRA website itself, to their credit. And they mention how it's imprecise. They say it's, couched in highly abstract terms, it's vague wording, and that means that the definition could be very broad in scope, or it could be actually, I would argue, it could be very narrow in scope, because it depends on what you mean by maybe. It may not be. Same thing with incompleteness. There was another paper that's quoted fairly often that says that there are certain things that are clearly anti-Semitic, which like the things I mentioned on the previous page, and this, even though people might disagree within the discipline, but they're not covered at all by the definition. So there's some serious problems with the IRA definition, working definition. So I came up with one. For the purposes of this talk, since I didn't come up with a great title for it yet, I'm calling it the algorithmic definition of anti-Semitism, because it seems a little bit presumptuous for me to call it the Elder of Zion definition of anti-Semitism. But here's what I have. And the words are as important as the format. So it's hostility towards, denigration of, malicious lies about, or discrimination against Jews, as in large font in the middle. And then the second column is as individual Jews, as a people, as a religion, as an ethnic group, or as a nation, meaning Israel. So it has essentially a column A and a column B, plus with Jews being centered in the middle of it. There are great advantages, in my opinion, of this definition. One is that it's concise. The whole thing can fit inside a tweet. Secondly, as we're going to look and find out, it's precise and it's complete, meaning that not only does it define what is anti-Semitic, if you go through it and you see something that doesn't fit, it probably isn't anti-Semitic. It centers on Jews. Jews themselves are the key focus of it. The IRA definition doesn't do that. It mentions, I think it mentions something about institutions and things like that, but it's no, Jews are really the key. They're the center. They are the target of anti-Semites, of Jew haters. If somebody's attacking a Jewish school or a synagogue, the reason they're doing it is because of the Jews. If they're attacking Israel, it's because of the Jews. It's not that they, if a synagogue gets sold to a church, it's even might still have the Star of David on the outside. It might still have Hebrew letters, but nobody's going to be worrying too much about it being attacked because it no longer has the Jews there. The other thing about this that I think is important is that the collective Jew definition, the right side column, the object column, is the Jews could be a people, a religion, an ethnic group, or a nation. I think this is very important in the sense that in the IRA definition, it's almost apologetic about including criticism, or, I'm not going to say criticism, but including attacks on Israel as being anti-Semitic. It's saying, well, things that are not malicious, things that are not, that are criticisms that are legitimate criticisms are certainly not, of Israel is not anti-Semitic. But to me, there's no difference between that and any of the other collective Jew categories. You can have legitimate criticism of individual Jews. You could have legitimate criticism of Judaism as a religion. You could have, all of those things are fair game for legitimate criticism. There's no reason to single out Israel. Israel is just as much a core part of the collective Jew nowadays as any of the others. And we all know this. We all know that when you have a malicious attack, when you have an unfair attack, an obsessive attack on Israel, that the reason is anti-Semitism. And this definition shows that very clearly, that there's no difference between them. And just because those five categories are not completely congruent with each other doesn't mean anything, because yes, it's true, there are some people who are anti-Zionists, great, but there are some people that are atheist Jews too, but they could certainly be the object of anti-Semitism, even though they don't consider themselves religiously Jews. So of course all the definitions don't fit, but they're not all the same. But the as an object of hate, they are, Jews are the reason. And there's no examples needed. This definition is complete. You don't need to get into examples. It's also flexible. In other words, if you don't like my left column over here of hostility towards denigration, malicious lies, and you think that there's another category of antecedents that that could be added, we could add it. It's the definition is not only the words, but it's also the format that makes it so powerful. So if you decide, so one of the examples I'd like to bring is that we all have heard of Natan Sharansky's 3D definition of delegitimization, demonization, and double standards. You could easily replace the left column of this, the antecedent column, with that, and it still works. You might want to still add another D or two, for example, discrimination, but nevertheless, it fits. In other words, the left-hand side is what the actions are and what the feelings are and what the words are, or whatever you want to say. And if you have a good list, it still works. So that's what I mean by flexible. And and if in the future there's another category of the collective Jew, you could throw that in there too. So for example, the Holocaust denial. Okay, that is a specific example in IRA, but it's malicious lies about Jews as individual Jews, a people, and a nation. So you could walk it through the list and see why it is anti-Semitic on this. Attacks on Jews in Brooklyn is hostility towards Jews as individual Jews. Saying that Jews control pharmaceutical companies is hostility towards denigration of and malicious lies about Jews as a people. Saying that Talmud supports enslaving non-Jews, which is the thing that Alice Walker said, is malicious lies towards Jews as a religion. Let's get into some harder questions. Anti-circumcision and anti-kosher slaughter laws. The people that are promulgating these laws, or that are suggesting these laws, say that they are not at all anti-Semitic. They're only trying to protect children, or they're only trying to protect animals. But if you look a little bit more carefully at it, and this is where the context is, and this is where the words that I have on the left side of hostility, denigration, and malicious are all part of the context. You can have a lie about Jews that's not anti-Semitic. You could say something negative about Jews that's not anti-Semitic. But once you get to the level of hostility or denigration or malicious, so over in this case, it's discrimination, because they're saying they care about the children, but ear piercings on babies result in infection more often than circumcision does. No one says to ban that. And on the Belgian anti-slaughter laws still explicitly allow hunting animals. They say, the Jewish and the Muslim slaughter is completely off limits because it's so cruel, but you can still go out and shoot animals because that's not food production. Well, what's the difference? If you really care about animals, or do you care about, what's this artificial category they're putting in? In other words, it is discrimination because they're saying, well, with the large majority of the Gentiles of Europe who enjoy shooting for sport, for example, or it's important culturally for them, then we don't want to affect that. But the Jews we can go against, the Muslims we can go against. So that's discrimination against Jews as a religion. Other examples. Roger Waters from Pink Floyd saying that Sheldon Adelson thinks that only Jews are human and everyone else is a slave. That's clearly hostility towards and denigration and malicious lies about the individual Jew of Sheldon Adelson, but also his ideas come from fake Talmud quotes. Adelson never said anything close to that, and the only place he could have found that were from fake Talmud quotes, which means it's also attacking Jews as a religion. Ilhan Omar is all about the Benjamins. It's saying that the only reason any politician would support Israel is for money. That's a malicious lie about Jews as a nation. The Khazar theory and temple denial are malicious lies about Jews as a people and a nation. And these are not at all clear from the IRA definition. Now, then we get to the next harder category of anti-Semitism, of defining anti-Semitism. A lot of them require knowing the context, as which the IRA definition says, but it requires mind reading. You sort of need to know what the person really meant. The mural that Jeremy Corbyn got in trouble about for saying nice things about it, the Freedom for Humanity mural, if you look at it, is it against Jews or is it against capitalism altogether? Only two of the people that were on that monopoly board supported by the poor people are Jewish.
Excuse me,
Yes,
Mr. Zoyan, could you wrap it up in 2 or 3 minutes?
I will try. Okay.
Thank you.
So but at any rate, so in this case, it's context. And we'll have to go into this a little bit later. There was an ad for this against this woman politician that they changed her name from Sarah Johnson Rothman to Sarah Rothman. And then there's the Trump ad that he had that he tweeted. So all of these things require some level of mind reading. And the nice thing about it is that it mirrors the real life debate. In other words, to try to fit things into this definition are the same arguments as you would have as trying to fit in regular, just if you were discussing amongst yourselves, okay, well, is this anti-Semitic? Is that not anti-Semitic? You're essentially arguing about the stuff that's on this definition over here. So I think that this definition can actually improve the real life debate, because if it actually mirrors a very good definition of anti-Semitism, then you could use it. Everybody could have the same frame of reference when they're referring to it and saying, well, here and then and here I'm going. You can use it as a taxonomy. You could say the reason this is anti-Semitic is because it is denigration of Jews as a religion. It is hostility towards Jews as a nation. Whatever. You could actually, if you need to explain why something is anti-Semitic, you could use this as a taxonomy in order to be able to explain it. So in short, I believe that this definition is clearer, more precise, concise, useful, complete, flexible, and accurate than the IRA working definition. So that is my suggestion. Now, what to do with it future-wise, politically, that's not my field. But I believe that this does a better job. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you very much, and we'll come back to